Vivienne and Natasha had been inseparable since their first year at university. Two souls who understood each other without needing words. Now, at 32, they inhabited different worlds within the same city. Vivienne was a successful architect with a penthouse overlooking Dubai's skyline, while Natasha owned a boutique gallery in the arts district. Yet their bond remained unshakable, or so Vivienne believed. Natasha's husband, Adrian, had always been the quiet presence in their friendship. A venture capitalist with sharp features and an even sharper mind, he was the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Vivienne had watched their marriage evolve over 7 years. The passionate early days, the gradual shift toward comfortable distance, and lately, something that looked almost like resignation in Adrian's eyes. When Natasha accepted a 3-month consulting position in London to help her ailing father, it seemed natural that Adrian would need support. Vivienne offered to check in on him, bring meals, ensure he wasn't eating takeout every night. Adrian initially deflected, but loneliness has a way of breaking down walls. Their first real conversation happened on a Thursday evening. Adrian called as Vivienne was leaving the office, his voice carrying an undertone of vulnerability she'd never heard before. "I know you're busy, but would you want to grab coffee? I'm going crazy in this apartment." Over cappuccinos, he talked about the distance that had grown between him and Natasha, not dramatic or sudden, but like watching the tide slowly recede. He spoke about feeling invisible in his own marriage, about the way Natasha had thrown herself into work until their connection became transactional. Vivienne listened, offering sympathy and understanding, unaware that she was being pulled into something dangerous. The dinners became routine. Adrian would cook, they'd share wine, and the conversations grew deeper, more personal. He asked about her failed relationships, her secret desire for something real beneath the professional success. One night, caught between the city lights and her own loneliness, Vivienne realized she was anticipating these evenings more than her own social life. Adrian noticed the change in her eyes before either of them acknowledged it. On a rainy evening in late September, as they stood on the balcony watching the storm roll across the desert, his hand found hers. Neither pulled away. "This is dangerous," Vivienne whispered, but she didn't move. "I know," Adrian replied, stepping closer. The kiss tasted like guilt and inevitability, the kind that changes everything. Vivienne told herself it would be one time. A moment of weakness born from connection and proximity. She was wrong. What began as a single transgression on Adrian's leather sofa became a pattern woven into their clandestine meetings. They were careful, meeting at his office after hours, driving to hotels in neighboring Emirates, communicating through encrypted messages that they deleted immediately. Each precaution reinforced what they already knew: this was unforgivable. The physical attraction between them was undeniable. Adrian touched her with a tenderness that came from months of emotional intimacy. His hands traced her collarbone as if memorizing her, his mouth against her neck while she gasped his name into the darkness of a rented room. There was a desperation to it, the passion of two people seeking something they couldn't name. When he entered her, it felt like coming home and committing treason simultaneously. Vivienne would return to her penthouse and shower obsessively, scrubbing away his touch as if water could cleanse her conscience. But even as the guilt consumed her, she found herself messaging him within hours. "I can't stop thinking about you. What are we doing? I need to see you again." Adrian struggled differently. He began drinking more, staying late at the office, making excuses to avoid video calls with Natasha. Vivienne would find him staring out windows with an expression of such profound sadness that she wanted to comfort him, even as she was the source of his anguish. "We have to end this," Vivienne said one night, lying across his chest in a sterile hotel room with beige walls that seemed to judge them silently. "I know," Adrian replied, his hand stroking her hair. But neither of them ended it. Instead, they deepened it. Vivienne bought lingerie she'd never worn for anyone, pieces in deep burgundy and black that made her feel both powerful and ashamed. She'd dress for him in hotel bathrooms, watching her reflection, this version of herself that was unrecognizable. When Adrian saw her, his breath would catch, and he'd move toward her with an intensity that made her forget, just for a moment, that this was destroying everything. Their conversations became confessions. Adrian spoke about his fear of commitment, his belief that he'd chosen wrong when he married Natasha. Vivienne revealed her own doubts about friendship, her suspicion that Natasha had always been the golden one, more talented, more loved, more deserving. These admissions were the real infidelity, she realized. The physical act was almost secondary to this emotional exposure. By the time Natasha's return date approached, 6 weeks away, they were entangled in a way that felt inextricable. Vivienne would lie awake at night, heart racing, imagining her best friend's return, imagining the moment everything would collapse. And yet, she kept seeing Adrian. Natasha returned on a Tuesday morning, and everything changed. She arrived at the airport glowing, lighter than when she'd left, her father stabilized and her own burden temporarily lifted. Vivienne picked her up, her hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel as her best friend chatted about London weather and her father's recovery. The drive from the airport felt like driving toward a cliff. Adrian was home when they arrived, and the moment Natasha walked through the door, something shifted in the apartment's atmosphere. Vivienne watched him embrace his wife, and for a terrible moment, she saw affection there, real affection, not passion, but something deeper. When Natasha pulled back and looked at his face, a flicker of something, recognition? Suspicion, crossed her features. "You look tired," Natasha said softly, touching his cheek. "I've missed you," Adrian replied, and it was true in a way that made Vivienne want to disappear. Over the following weeks, Vivienne bore witness to something she hadn't anticipated, Adrian's genuine attempt to rebuild his marriage. He came home early from work, he asked Natasha questions about her time in London, he touched her with tenderness. Natasha, relieved to have her husband's attention again, responded in kind. They began sleeping together again. Vivienne knew this because Adrian mentioned it in a late-night message. "I had to. She needed it. I needed it. Please understand." But Vivienne couldn't understand. She was drowning in a jealousy so profound it manifested as physical pain. She began pulling away from Natasha, a withdrawal so subtle that it could be disguised as busyness. Where once she'd called daily, now it was weekly. Where she'd been a fixture in their home, now she made excuses. Natasha noticed immediately. "Are you upset with me?" Natasha asked one afternoon, cornering Vivienne at a gallery opening. "You've been strange since I got back. Did something happen while I was gone?" Vivienne's heart seized. "Nothing happened. I'm just busy with work." But Natasha's eyes, those observant, loving eyes, searched hers, and Vivienne saw the moment her best friend's intuition activated. It was subtle, like watching someone solve a puzzle they didn't want to solve. "I don't believe you," Natasha said quietly. "But I'll pretend I do, because whatever this is, I don't want to know. Not yet." She walked away, and Vivienne understood that her silence had created a chasm that no amount of confession could bridge. Adrian tried to contact her, but Vivienne stopped responding. She'd created distance, and now she was living in it, a self-imposed exile from the people she loved most. The lie had metastasized. It was no longer just about the affair. It was about every interaction, every moment of friendship corrupted by betrayal. 3 months after Natasha's return, the fabric of their lives had become paper-thin. Adrian grew colder in public but messaged Vivienne desperately in private. "I can't do this. Being near you but not having you is killing me. She knows something is wrong. She asks me constantly. I think I've made a terrible mistake." Yet whenever Vivienne suggested he confess, Adrian would retreat into excuses and self-preservation. Natasha, meanwhile, had transformed into someone observing her own marriage from behind glass. She was still loving, still present, but with an underlying wariness that broke Vivienne's heart daily. She'd lost her glow, replaced by a kind of guarded exhaustion. Vivienne watched her best friend deteriorate and knew she was the cause. The three of them existed in a triangle of unspoken knowledge. Natasha suspected. Adrian knew. Vivienne carried the entire truth like a stone in her chest. One evening, Vivienne found herself alone with Adrian at the grocery store, a chance meeting orchestrated by no one but fate. He grabbed her arm gently, pulling her toward the produce section. "We need to talk," he whispered urgently. "There's nothing to talk about," Vivienne replied, but her voice wavered. "I can't live like this. She's asking questions constantly. She says she feels betrayed even though she doesn't know why. It's destroying her." "Then tell her the truth," Vivienne said coldly, though it felt like swallowing glass. "If I do, I lose her. I lose everything. You already have, Vivian said, and she walked away, leaving him standing alone among the fruit and vegetables, his face a portrait of desperation. That night, unable to bear it anymore, Vivian finally responded to Natasha's unspoken plea for honesty. She invited her best friend to coffee, a public place where emotions might be contained. They sat in a quiet corner of a cafe overlooking the marina. Natasha ordered tea but didn't drink it. She simply looked at Vivian with an expression of such profound sadness that Vivian nearly broke. I know, Natasha said before Vivian could speak. I don't know the details, and honestly, I'm not sure I want them. But I know something happened between you and Adrian. I've known for weeks. Vivian's throat closed. How? The way you stopped looking at me. The way he looks at you when he thinks I'm not watching. The way both of you are slowly disappearing. Natasha's voice was steady, but tears rolled silently down her cheeks. What I want to know is, do you love him? The question hung in the air like a blade suspended above water. Vivian wanted to lie. She opened her mouth to construct a denial, but something in Natasha's expression, the desperate hope that this might all be a misunderstanding, made her incapable of another falsehood. I don't know, Vivian whispered. I know I betrayed you. I know I betrayed our friendship. And I know that whatever I felt, it doesn't matter because I've destroyed the most important relationship in my life. Natasha stared at her untouched tea. When she spoke, her voice was hollow. You had one job in our friendship, and that was to be the person I could trust completely. And you chose passion over loyalty. You chose a moment over a lifetime. She stood up and left. No dramatic accusations, no shouting. Just the quiet ending of something irreplaceable. 6 months later, Vivian sat in her penthouse, the same space that had once felt like a sanctuary, and experienced the full weight of her choices. Adrian had tried to fix his marriage initially, but the foundation was rotted beyond repair. Natasha had moved through the stages of grief with surgical precision: anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. She'd consulted a divorce lawyer. The proceedings were civil but absolute. Adrian attempted several times to reach out to Vivian, but she'd made it clear, there was no moving forward, only wreckage to acknowledge. The affair itself felt distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. What remained was sharper, more painful, the loss of Natasha. They'd built their friendship in the specific language of trust, and Vivian had spoken fluent betrayal. There was no translation back to something salvageable. Vivian learned that Natasha had taken a position with a gallery in London, the same city where she'd fled when her marriage cracked. She learned through Instagram that Natasha had a new circle of friends, a new life, one in which Vivian simply didn't exist. It was the most thorough erasure, and Vivian deserved every moment of it. She threw herself into work with a desperation that bordered on self-destruction. She won awards for architectural designs, received commissions from the city's most prestigious developers, but each achievement felt hollow. Success without someone to share it with was just performance. The hardest part wasn't the guilt or the loneliness, it was the realization that the lie had been the true infidelity. The sexual betrayal had been momentary, a crossing of a physical boundary. But the lie, the calculated silence, the choice to preserve herself at the expense of her best friend's reality, that was the real crime. Vivian thought often about calling Natasha, practicing apologies she'd never send. What could she say that wouldn't sound like justification? What words existed for "I chose my own cowardice over your right to truth"? Adrian moved to another city for work, a clean break from his failed marriage and the reminder of his own moral failure. He sent Vivian one final message: "I'm sorry for what I put you through. More importantly, I'm sorry for what we both did to Natasha." Vivian never replied. Standing on her balcony one evening, watching the Dubai skyline blur as the sun set, Vivian understood something fundamental. The deepest betrayals aren't the passionate ones. They're the quiet ones. They're the lies told to protect yourself. They're the silences chosen over difficult truths. They're the way you convince yourself that honesty would cause more damage than deception, when really, you're just too afraid to lose everything. She'd lost everything anyway. The story of Vivian, Natasha, and Adrian didn't end with dramatic confrontation or redemptive reconciliation. It ended in the space between them, a silence so profound that no words could ever cross it. Vivienne would spend the rest of her life carrying the weight of that silence, understanding too late that some betrayals can never be forgiven, not because the heart isn't capable of forgiveness, but because trust, once shattered, cannot be reassembled into its original shape. In the end, the only person Vivienne had truly betrayed was herself. The end.